Kenya Airways, the pride of Africa, our national carrier. It posted a loss of 8.6 billion shillings in June this year and 4 billion last year. Well, it also has a CEO who is on the way to leaving the company. And what's really happening? There's so much going on with KQ, whether we talk about the nationalization possibilities, whether we're talking about the direct flight from Nairobi to New York, whether we're talking about the issues that are happening with the unions when it comes to the pilots. Let's get down to all of these things with the CEO himself, and that is Sebastian Mikosz, today on the Trading Bell.
Sebastian is the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Airways Limited. He has over 20 years professional experience in executive management, both in the private and public sectors. He has also held various non-executive roles as supervisory board member. Sebastian is the former president and chief executive officer of LOT Polish Airlines. He has also worked as a director at Deloitte Business Consulting, Warsaw office, and vice president of the Polish Information and Foreign Investment Agency.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Right off the bat, just very recently, of course, the inaugural flight that was from JKIA to JFK, it's been a year, 28th of October 2018.
Yes.
And, you know, a lot of people thought that this was almost the silver bullet for KQ in a way, in terms of recuperating, in terms of minimizing the losses and getting back up there. I believe in a year about 105,000 passengers have been ferried, but there were also a lot of those optimism around the cargo that was to move and create additional revenue as well. And actually, it was touted that 10% of the revenue rise was going to come from this flight. So despite all of this, you know, what would you say to the critics who have said that the flight did not achieve what it was meant to achieve?
I would say that they are not professional and they should have listened to what we said, because this flight and this launch had two areas. One was the area of business decision, one on the other area of emotions. The problem is then this type of comments are coming completely from the area of emotions, not from the area of business. And we made a business decision. Of course, we understood the impact, and I understand the impact as a company for the country, for our PR, for the perception of the airline. That was part of the reason why we did it. But that was like 5%. 95% of this decision was made on an assumption that it was an investment. We never in any statement says that we will make money on that flight, particularly in the first time. So we said that we will make money only after the period of investment, which we evaluated to 18 to 24 months. That was the case that we discussed with the board. And this is why it was also quite a heavy decision, because we knew it's going to be loss-making in the beginning. So that's number one. Number two is, you're asking me about cargo or revenues. I called it a $100 million project because indeed, if we go daily for a full year, it's going to be around $100 million revenue, which is more or less 10%. Now it has brought more than 60 million for the first period it was flying. So it's not a bad result, with an average of 73 to 75% load factor. Of course, with very low season and very high seasons. This seasonality surprised us. This is why we adjusted the frequencies, which were a national drama. And actually, I'm really still surprised because, you know, or you check and you speak, or you just don't speak. And people are saying you move to 3 to 5 to 7. Before the flight started, after the sales period when we tested the flight, because it was a big investment, we decided that the first period we're going to keep daily, then in the lower season we're going to go to 5 weekly, and then in the higher season we're going to go to 7. There's plenty of routes where we do this, like Paris, for example, when we change the frequencies, to adapt to what we can sell at best and also what the market tells us. We started developing partnerships. Please remember that our credibility on this flight was close to zero when we started, because everybody in the industry and in this friendly commentators was expecting that this flight will never take off and that this flight will be cancelled at the very last minute, as long time that was a historic pattern. So it was, of course, an internal big project, cultural project, to shift from shrinking and airline that has no ambitious projects to launch it, and it worked.
Okay.
So I'm.
So you say it's a success in your eyes, given the benchmark
it's going to be
you
a
had.
success. It's going to be a success when it's going to be profitable. For the
Yes.
moment, it's still an investment. It brings a lot of passengers to the network. Please remember that this flight doesn't bring passengers to Nairobi. It brings passengers from east coast of the US to mostly Central Africa, Eastern and Central Africa, where we have the denser network. More than half of the passengers doesn't stay in Nairobi but goes beyond. So we already feel the positive effect of feeding our network through the flights to Uganda, Tanzania, Mauritius that we start thanks to this flight, Seychelles that we increased, but we have also plenty of people going to Johannesburg. So you see, it's a business decision to raise the level of passenger transiting through Nairobi hub, which is why we exist and which is what we want to achieve.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the numbers, because June 30th, the results you released, there was a loss of 8.6 billion.
Yes.
The same time last year it was 4 billion. I mean, if we look back to 2015, 2016, when the airline was making losses of 25 billion thereabout, there's less. But if we compare to last year, why has the loss doubled this year? Why is there a slip back?
This explanation is very easy to do. More than half of what we lost more is so-called one-offs. So we have a lot of legacy, which is mainly in fleet costs or in impairment tests, and we are cleaning, and we're going to continue cleaning this. So the problem is that I would really like to appeal to a minimum of financial professionalism. The airline is shifting, first of all, from last year to this year, from operating loss to an operating profit. So this is what you make when you fly, and that's the real good reason. Now, unfortunately, we are carrying substantial debts and substantial interest to be repaid from the 2014-2015 period. So we are recognizing this in our accounts. Actually, our half-year results last year were -5. The increase was we literally doubled the losses, out of which we explained that more than half was accounting retreatment, so change of accounting standards. So there are non-cash elements. It doesn't mean that we are all healthy and all is good, but it means that this drama about just reading the last line is again I would say, lack of professionalism, because the airline has explained, and we have explained numerous times, why this figure is going to change. Now, I can tell you, it's not the news, but we are working on refinancing our fleet, okay? So we're working on lowering the costs. But there are the accounting costs and the cash costs. If the company makes a decision in the next weeks or months to, for example, sell and lease back the planes that were announced all over the press that KQ sold the planes. So that was very interesting, because we never sold those planes, and
So
we
you're
never
saying that did not happen?
Of course, and I don't, and you know, the lack of professionalism is even in picking the phone and asking us before printing, because we kept saying, yes, we have plans, numerous RFPs going on, to do a sale and lease back, to check the value, to see how we can extract cash and lower our costs by sale and lease back, which lowers your monthly cost, because you extend the period of time over which you keep the aircraft, which is the easiest way to restructure your cost. The problem is that you need to have a good offer, you need to have someone who is interested, you need to negotiate a contract, and then at the very end, you need to make the decision that that's better for the company than the situation we have.
Another issue, of course, that was widely covered, and rightly so, was the aim of KQ to try and take over the operations at JKIA. And then, of course, now we're seeing the MPs saying, and it didn't work out, the PIP that was proposed and things like that. But what was the rationale behind KQ actually wanting to take over JKIA in the first place?
We don't want to take over JKIA. You see, this is again, sorry to say it, but this is just again lack of fundamental understanding of what we've put in those papers. By the way, we were criticized based on a leakage of a document that we just sent. So I never tabled this document to anyone. Nobody ever asked us, why are you want to do? We were just criticized a priori that a loss-making airline wants to take a profit-making airport. which is, again, sorry, but a fundamental lack of professionalism, not understanding
So what was your proposal?
But the proposal is to put all national assets together. This is actually what the parliament has come as a conclusion in a different way. Because we cannot nationalize ourselves, yes? But what we did, we looked at all the competition, and part of the solution, we said, look at all our bigger competitors, the ones who keep being quoted by all the Kenyan media. Emirates, Qatar, Etihad, Ethiopian, Rwanda, Air Tanzania, Air Uganda. They are all fully state-owned, and they are all in one holding with the airport. And of course, an airport is always profitable. It's a monopoly. If we were given a law which obliges all the Kenyans to fly Kenya Airways, I could predict the profitability within weeks. But the difference is that we are on a market, free market environment, so you as a passenger have 26 operators flying to Jomo Kenyatta, only to Jomo Kenyatta. Then you have, of course, Mombasa, you have Wilson. Okay, we don't compete in the same markets, but everybody flies. But you have only one international airport, which is Jomo Kenyatta. So, with all due respect, but when you are a monopoly, your life is much easier when you are on free market. And the aim was not to take Jomo Kenyatta operations, but to put all the assets and have a cross-subsidy principle in which the operations of handling, fuel distribution, duty-free, passenger charges, and the airline gets into one pot. So this pot is melted, and then the money comes, because they have a much higher margin, to elevate all the hub. Take the model of Singapore, exactly as I meant, also state-owned, fully controlled by the state, not least, I think they are not listed, so I have to check. But what's the purpose? The purpose is that Changi Airport has 50% market share with Singapore Airlines and another 50% with other carriers. That would be a perfect model in Nairobi to copy. So that was the essence of the proposals. That was sabotaged before we even open our mouth.
What was the sabotage? Yeah.
The sabotage was to say to employees of the airport that we want to fire them, which was nothing else but a lie.
Which then, of course, led to the backlash.
Yeah, it led to the backlash, but it was just a lie. I mean, it was. There is no other word. In the document we were presenting that leaked, that was not even officially started. You know, there is a process of PPP in Kenya by the law. So the first step is that you submit a proposal, and only once this proposal is approved by Treasury, you can start talks. So it could have been ended with a phone call. And actually what we submitted in this paper was that we want to increase employment, not decrease employment. If your target...
That's the exact opposite.
Yeah, but please, has anyone checked? Has anyone called us? It was in the paper, so it was considered as truth. So we tried. Actually, what we lost in this process, that I have to recognize, is completely the communication battle. Why? Because being professional, we said ourselves as a team, we do not communicate on a leaked proposal. On a proposal that was leaked actually just to be killed. Why? Because there is a process, and this process involves the government, which has two entities in which it has shares. Once it gives it green light, we will have a stakeholder engagement, we'll have formal meetings. It's a process. It can be stopped at any minute, but it was stopped even before the first meeting. So this process never started. And it was, of course, it created emotions. That's completely normal. When you have a guy who arrives, says, I want to take the airport and, by the way, fire people. We never, ever said in any place that we want to decrease employment. The HR part that was so commented was assuming that everybody keeps its job as is, and actually we increase productivity by flying more planes with the same number of employees, and over time, the next 5-7 years, we have to, I don't remember, increase by 1,000 or 2,000, depending on the financial results. You cannot grow a hub without growing employment. So that's where the battle was lost.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll continue this conversation with KQ CEO Sebastian Mikosz right here on the Trading Belt. Stay with us.
This is coming home for the holidays. This is connecting with someone you've missed for months. This is more than a decoder. This is a family coming together. Bring the family closer this festive season. Get a GoTV decoder with 1 month of GoTV Max subscription for only 1,999 shillings. GoTV. Live it. Love it.
Landlord, property manager, agent, real estate developer, or homeowner? Then you need to be part of the International Congress for Global Landlords and Property Owners Associations Expo. From Wednesday 4th to Friday 6th of December 2019, the ULTAC, in partnership with Standard Group, will host the International Congress for Global Landlords and Property Owners Associations and Property Expo at the Kenyatta University Amphitheatre. The Congress will bring together global landlords, property owners, agents, managers, developers, and all other related stakeholders in the real estate industry to interact, share, and learn from one another as we seek to open up the Kenyan market in a bid to bring the much-needed growth. To be part of the Nairobi Congress, kindly contact info@ultac.org or visit www.ultac.org. For Expo, contact Mary on mnganga at standardmedia.co.ke. International Congress for Global Landlords and Property Owners Associations. Real estate done real good.
This is KTN News.
So now let's talk about the nationalization and hence the formation of a holding company that will have all the aviation entities per se. Is this what you were hoping for?
This is what we recommended in the white paper that we submitted to Cabinet, that it should be one company where all the entities are working and extracting synergies. Again, based on the experience and the benchmarks that we have in this region, because again, we compete mainly with people who operate sub-Saharan Africa and Gulf carriers. So that's yes. Now the Parliament made its own reading and its own inquiry on how it should look. Now the process started of preparing. How is it what's going to be the outcome? That's absolutely not for me to say. But that's what we were recommending indeed.
Okay, let's move away now to something that's currently ongoing with regards to the pilots and the issue that's had the back and forth with the Kenya Airline Pilots Association and the dispute with KQ with regards to one of the sections of the collective bargaining agreement when it came to hiring foreign pilots. That was for the Boeing 737 fleet. Any dispute resolution on the horizon right now?
No, because the dispute with pilots union, and again I insist, it's not a dispute with pilots, it's a dispute with the union.
Yes.
And I meet enough pilots to know that all the pilots are not sharing the position of the union.
But of course it represents some of them.
Yeah, it represents the majority of them.
Yes.
But that doesn't matter, because you see, the dispute with the union of pilots is as long as the history of KQ. I think it's not a dispute, I think it's a power struggle. Kalpa was used to run the airline. Please remember that they removed the previous CEO and chairman. So they had a very power approach, not, I would say, union approach. So the idea was to more control than offer solutions. There are facts which are undeniable. The fact is that we have one of the most expensive group in the industry. The fact is that we have a shortage. The fact is that the CBA which were signed, because there were many of them, are giving them extremely advantageous conditions in terms of training, career progress. So these are the facts that they don't even deny. In the last letter, they finally agreed on the fact that we have a shortage of pilots, which all of the passengers could observe this summer when we tried to fly more, and then when they were calling in sick, we could not operate flights, and we had a crew shortage, a massive crew shortage issue. So there is a clause which says that we are ready to hire contract pilots if we have crew shortages in the network, just for the time of the training of the pilots who are on the payroll, if I may say so. So of course it has. This is the very interesting part, because in Kenya now, I'm an adopted Kenyan, I would say. So I know how easy it is to play the emotion of foreigners, because it was played against me many times. We do not hire foreign pilots. We actually are currently hire Kenyan pilots. So
you hired recently about 40?
No, for the moment we only hired few. We want to hire more than 40.
Okay.
And most of the ones who are currently hired are the ones who goes on the 737 fleet, which I think most of them are former KQ pilots. So it's quite funny to me to have this type of questions, because actually what they say is completely not true. We do not exclude to reach out for foreign pilots. if we don't have more Kenyan pilots. But you know, just from a very simple administrative thing, it's much easier for the management to hire any Kenyan than any foreigner. I don't have to go through KCA approvals. I don't have to go through immigration, and you know how this process can be painful. I don't go through an emotional side because these are Kenyans who work here, so they are much more flexible. I don't have all the expats problems of bringing families, not bringing families, and all of this. So why would we reach out to foreigners? Why we have Kenyans? The board has met the union very recently, recommunicated it again. I can only be very sad that in the last 2.5 years, we have made, I don't know, 20, 30 proposals to change the CBA. On the planning side, on the training side. You know, it's a really complicated document. It's very simple to answer because all of the proposals were rejected. All of them. So how do you want to reach a common ground when on one side you have a management who wants to keep the airline flying? Actually, they could fly more. And on the other side, you have a union who just says no to everything. Ask them. That would be very interesting what they answer. Of course, they will say mismanagement, so no worries. They'll say mismanagement. I know the answers.
All right. So on that note, you know, you've had 2 years at KQ,
Almost
I believe, almost 3. But of course, in May this year, you said December you will be leaving.
Yes, I'll be shortening my contract. Yes.
Yes, you're shortening your contract, and you essentially handed in your resignation and said it was for personal.
Yeah, it's not a resignation. Okay. Let's like this.
Okay, well, how would you phrase it?
It's a shortening of the contract.
Okay.
So we rearrange the length of the contract. It's
fine.
A resignation is, but the effect is the same. You are right.
So effectively, your time at KQ is coming to a close
Correct.
at the end of this year.
Yes.
We've talked about profits or lack of. We've talked about pilots and more. But you said it was for personal reasons that you were stepping down.
Why didn't we talk about the 3,600 remaining employees of the company?
In terms of?
In terms of what they think, are they happy? Do you know that we insourced more than 400 people? No management did it. Nobody noticed. If you don't have a technician who looks after your plane, you will not fly. If you don't have a crew that operates, we will not fly. This is, you see, they have what they wanted. You only asked me about 10% of our company, while I still have 90% who every day does excellent job to turn it around. So I just use this opportunity.
Okay, I'll meet you in the middle and say, hey, majority are doing something that you're proud of, that you've worked with them on, and whatever we asked, of course, because if there's a dispute, everybody wants to know what's the situation between the pilots right now and with the Kalpa situation, and like we've just talked about. So of course, that was something you also needed to clarify.
Okay.
But let's end on a sweet note, maybe bittersweet, I suppose. As you come to the end of your tenure at KQ, you know, what is your biggest takeaway? And also, again, why did you cut your contract short?
The biggest takeaway for me is that it's doable, but it requires more than we have today.
Okay.
First of all, it really requires a good diagnosis. The diagnosis is that if we don't change the systematic element of Kenyan environment, I'm talking about aviation policy, the airline will continue struggling. This is not the type of airline, and again, let me be very clear, because then I'll read in the papers that they announced the end of KQ. But, you know, an airline like this doesn't disappear from Monday to Tuesday. That never happens. But I'm really struggling to understand why nobody noticed that in the last 10 years, the northern neighbor of Kenya, which is Ethiopia, has built an airline which is 3 times bigger than Kenya Airways, while 10 years ago, Kenya Airways was bigger. That didn't ring the bell anywhere. I'm a little surprised that nobody noticed that a small country which used to have many problems, which is Rwanda, has invested in their own airline, politically speaking, are doing excellent job growing the airline, and recently they obtained more than $400 million investment from Qatar to build a new airport, to invest in a state-owned airline, which is severely competing with KQ. Not later than yesterday, I was in Dar es Salaam. I have to tell you that not only Air Tanzania, but also the airport of Dar es Salaam looks absolutely fantastic. Yes?
Yeah.
they will not sit in their corner waiting for us to give them leeway to operate. Air Uganda started with planes, and they started with state-owned company, not listed, no unions, severely subsidized, and they operate to Kenya. So, you see, there is a moment, and of course, all these legends about the CEO turnaround, and you can, first of all, you don't turn around an airline in many years, it's a process. I left LOT was still in losses. Look where LOT is today, it's a 3 times bigger company. The point is that we prepared everything, and it's we, and I always like saying we, because a CEO cannot do anything by himself. You know, the role of the CEO is to be an influencer. I just give directions. If there is no team behind me, and if there is no strong support, you can't do anything, because you just can't. Yeah? There is the legal framework, there is a social framework, there is a resistance. So my takeaway is that Kenya Airways should change the mandate. If the public expects dividends, I think it's the wrong approach. I think the role of Kenya Airways should be to very strongly support the GDP of Kenya through the creation of connectivity and jobs, through growing tourism, growing cargo that you mentioned, through being an injector of connectivity, which means money. Now, if you ask me, is it possible to pay dividends? Of course it is. But then I'll answer your question on New York in a different way. We would never open New York, because New York will be loss-making for the next 2 years. It's a big loss now. It's a big risk now. So if I was only driven by this as manager, and if we were only driven by this, we would say, why did we launch Geneva and Rome, by the way? Why did we increase? You see, it's all balancing the risks versus your market position. There is more and more passengers on African market and less than we carry, because there is more and more competition flying all over the place. Please remember, you have 4 daily flights from Qatar, 3 daily flights from Emirates, a daily from Etihad. You have everybody flying to Kenya, which is a very open country in terms of economy. You can come in, do business, you can extract your currency. So it's a completely different approach than many of the competition. So my point is that Kenya Airways is going to lose not on market value, but on market share.
By not being conscious
but
about
not be,
the
yes,
rest of the
but
continent.
here not being conscious that the airline is not in Kenya and for Kenyans. This is an airline which operates outside of Kenya. Our target.
Yeah, we talk pride of Africa.
Yeah, I'm always I don't
skeptical.
like skeptical, because it creates a lot of animosity in other countries, because you know you give yourself right to prominence. But that's marketing. That's not the problem. The problem is that the other airlines are taking much more market share faster than we do. So the level of water is going up, but our boat is not emerging.
Finally, why are you leaving? You've cited personal reasons.
So that's why I'm leaving.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. And where are you going from here, if you can tell us?
For the moment, I will go to visit Kenya, because one of my personal frustration is that I've been spending here almost 3 years, and my friends who are coming on safaris know more than I. So I will not leave Kenya without knowing most of its park, and without knowing most of the country. So that's what I'm going to focus on. And once I know, I'll share with pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of this conversation that we had today with Sebastian Mikosz. And it seems like the final word that he is putting out, even as his exit from the airline is looming in December, is that KQ needs to take note of all that is happening around Africa, with all the different airlines and all the different countries who are coming together to put up a much tougher front than perhaps we anticipated before. And we must look at that very closely. On that note, of course, thank you for catching up with the Trading Bell. Our social media handles are here. Stay with us. And of course, on KTN News, we always have more for you. So do stay tuned. My name is Malika Kazia. Thank you for watching the Trading Bell.